Okay, cool. That is working. At least it looks like it's working. All right, that looks like that. That looks good. Sweet, I think everything is working. Let me just double check some stuff. All right, pretty sure this is working. Pretty sure it's live. Hopefully everything looks good and sounds good. I'm trying a bunch of new settings, and so I have no idea how effective all this stuff is yet. Hey, boss. Oh man, how am I say that? Basmawub. Glad you are enjoying the tutorials. I've been trying to pump out a lot of content recently, so it's good to know that people are digging it. How are you doing today? And again, if my stream is being weird, I'm trying to figure out all of the new stuff I'm doing here. So I apologize if I'm just like staring at my screen for a minute trying to figure out what's going on. Oh man, so many new settings to play around with. That's sick. You got a gig though. It's cool that there's starting to be events now. Are you doing like a show at a club or something like that? I'm hopefully gonna be playing a show next weekend, maybe an outdoor thing, but we'll see if that ends up happening. But it warms my heart to know that DJs are getting back out there and doing things out in the world. If you're going to be around for just a little bit, the whole theme for tonight is going to be song feedback stuff. So if you want to share a track and get some feedback on it, that's kind of my plan for this evening. Well, while we are waiting for anybody to show up and play some tracks, let me try screwing around with some more settings. That's my audio hijack. If I'm still doing stuff in here, this should still work if I'm not mistaken. Actually, can you guys hear that? Nope, doesn't look like it. Yeah, link is going to be the best bet. I'm not going to be downloading a bunch of files from random people. That's how you get viruses or something crazy. So yeah, a link to like a SoundCloud or wherever you got streaming. If it's a private stream, that's also totally cool. All right, let me check this. Let's see if this works. Okay, cool. That does work. Cool. Yeah, let's check. Let's hear it. I'm trying not to focus on doing too many remixes for the song feedbacks, just because I don't want to get like copyright struck, but I don't think it'll be too big of a deal. Just hit me with that link. All right, I feel like I'm starting to figure out what's going on here in terms of software stuff. All right, well, while I'm waiting for that link, I'm just gonna do some sound design because that's what I like to do. Oops, not resonance, frequency. I can't see the link. That might be a setting I have to change on my end, and I have no idea how to do that. Let me play with the settings here. Live chat. Hey GNF, how's it going? I am now trying to figure out why you guys are not allowed to share links in the chat. This is important because the whole premise of this stream is you guys to be able to just send in links. So I wonder if there's a chat setting somewhere that I can tweak to make that actually happen. That didn't show up there. All right, anybody here a YouTube streaming expert? All right, well, I will just copy what you sent me, and I guess that's how I'll have to do it for right now until I figure out how to get links in there. So this you? Looks like it. Cool. So feel free as we're listening to it to kind of let me know if there's anything in particular you're looking for feedback on. Otherwise, I'll just kind of give you kind of generic feedback. It looks like it's for a remix contest.
Let's get down to business. Give you one more night to get this. We've had a million nights just like this.
And let me know how the volume is.
Let's get down to business. Please don't worry about me. To let my heart speak. Friends keep telling me to leave this. So let's get down to business. Let's get down to business. Give you one more night to get this. We've had a million nights just like this. So let's get down to business. Yes. Let's get down, give you one more. Back and forth with the ball.
Shanef, you can just send me a link to like SoundCloud or something like that. I'm not going to be accepting MP3s, so anywhere I can stream it is the way to do it. Links apparently don't work in the chat, so just send me the name of the track and I'll search for it.
Yes.
Nice. That's a pretty dope track. I didn't have an issue with the master, or at least that wasn't like the first main thing I noticed in here. The big thing here is the drums that need a little bit of love. I feel like what you're doing with the vocals seems really cool. Your bass needs a little bit of work, but there's mostly there. The drums, especially the drums during your intro and kind of like your break section, like before you get into the second drop, you have this kind of like filtered, muted kick, and it just doesn't sound clean and it's not very impactful. Like the kick during this part. That kick right there is not working for me. So I think number one, you need a kick that is a little cleaner, a little bit less in the mid-range and a little bit more in the lows. And then you start with it filtered like you're doing, because I like the concept of starting with filtered and then when the drop comes in, it actually comes in without the filter. But right now it's just like, it's kind of a gritty sounding kick drum and I want a really clean but huge sounding kick drum. So I think that's your number one issue. That's the thing that kind of stands out to me the most. And then kind of on a similar front the snare during the drops. It's a decent snare sample, but I think it either could be layered and or compressed a little bit more to make it a little thicker and a little bigger. In addition, a hair of reverb on the snare will go a really long way. Right now it's very fast, so it like comes in and it just goes away basically instantly. So I think adding, number one, compressing it or layering it, and then adding a little bit of reverb will make it kind of extend out a little bit, because you're using this kind of like down tempo beat, which has a lot of space in between the kick and the snare. So I think kind of extending that snare out a little bit, I think will do you a lot of good. So those are the two biggest things that I noticed. The other thing I think you could do is your bass sound during both of your drops. A tiny bit more distortion could also work. It could also be a tiny bit louder. So I think if you could like toss a saturator on there, or even like a really subtle amount of, I don't know, any distortion, whatever your favorite distortion plugin or device is, I think could go a really long way. I like the kind of weird melodic thing you have going on here. I think that could maybe change octaves every once in a while. Yeah, I made one of the very first quick tips I did for the channel was about drum layering, and I think that'll really take you a long way, because I like the drum samples you have for the most part, but like they need to be like, especially for this kind of music, the drums need to be like super, super huge. So if you dial in those drums a little bit, beef up your bass a tiny bit, I think you're like 90% of the way there. I think from there it's like little tiny minor tweaks here and there that could help out. Let's see if there's anything else. I like this part. Again, the kick here, same issue as the kick from beginning. I think the vocal and what you've done to the vocals is probably one of the strongest parts of this track, so really nice work on that. And then lastly, a little bit of hi-hats or shakers or some kind of percussive element, I think will really help drive, especially the second drop. I think it's okay to not have it in the first drop, but when it comes in here, I think this drop needs to sound a little bit different than this drop, and right now they're sounding almost identical. And adding a little bit of percussion here, like shakers, hi-hats, cowbells, whatever you want, something that gives it a little bit more of a rhythmic drive will help the second drop stand out from the first drop, and also kind of like up the energy level a little tiny bit, which is what you want for a second drop in a song like this. But yeah, that's mostly what I was hearing. Yeah, down those drums a little bit, beef up the bass, and a little bit more percussion here and there. I think that'll take you a long way. But other than that, it's a pretty dope track. I really like the vibe. I'm super into like the kind of down tempo-y, bassy, glitchy, weird stuff. So I like what you're doing here quite a bit. Any questions you have on that, or anything else you want to talk about for this track? And I'm still trying to figure out why you guys are not allowed to have links in the chat. Yeah, I think in some cases you can get away with copying and pasting a drop, but it's the kind of thing where like a little bit of extra love on the second drop will make your song that much more interesting and that much better. All right. I wonder if it's in here. Interesting. I found the setting in here, and it looks like it's allowing links to be put in the chat. Oh, it says live chat links will be locked. Okay, how do I find the chats that are held for review? Sorry guys, I'm still trying to figure out all this streaming stuff. Yeah, I think the bass sounds pretty good. I think it can the mid-range bass. I think the low end sounds really solid. I think you have the right idea with having the low end part be a little bit cleaner and the mid-range be more distorted. I think you can get a little bit more gritty with kind of like the mid-rangey part of it. Now keep the low end clean. I think that potentially having two mid-range layers that both have like different kinds of distortion might be another option too if you want to like really go for it. The other option is just make it a little bit louder, and I think that'll also help quite a bit. Hey Jack, how's it going? I will definitely check out your track. For some reason, YouTube is blocking links in the chat, so I'm trying to figure out a way around that. So if you could just put in the name of the song, and I can just Google it, I guess. This like wasn't expecting this to be an issue, but I am trying my best to figure out how to allow you guys to post links. Yeah, no worries. Harris, thanks for sharing that track. I really appreciate it. Feel free to pop by later on, or I guess you get later on, but we'll be doing this hopefully every Friday if you want to do this some more. Tweaking the settings here. And if anybody wants to do me a favor while I'm reviewing these tracks, figure out how I can enable links in YouTube or in the YouTube chat. Is this it? Is this you, Jack? Looks like it.
Have a little bit of fun now. I'll make one track out of two now, and it's a little bit funny when I'm wrong now, but everybody's talking about the breakdown. So I break these records into pieces and fix them together just how I need them. Played in a club at 12 o'clock, and what can I say? Party non-stop.
Is that you rapping? Or is that somebody else? Oh, so the vocals aren't the girl in the video? That's funny. I totally thought it was her singing. Nice. There's a lot of things I like about this track, but I think there's a few things that are kind of sticking out to me. What's up, Mr. Starbeast? For some reason, YouTube chat is not letting you guys put in links, so you can just put the name and your artist name and the song name in the chat, and I can just Google it, is what I've been doing for right now, until I figure out the link situation. Apologize about that. I have no idea. So yeah, so Keep Calm with Music actually kind of nails it with one of my first critiques, is that the female vocals, they have this very kind of like soft, dainty feel to them, which I think actually works pretty well for the vibe of the track. But I definitely feel like they could be a bit more front and center in the mix. Just make them a little bit louder and maybe layer them with some like background harmonizations or something, so it feels a little bit more kind of like rich and full, but also still kind of maintaining that kind of like softness to it. So that would definitely be the first thing I would try out. The other thing is the rapping in the middle. I liked it was there because it broke up the arrangement quite a bit, but it felt a little bit not like fully fleshed out, and this might just have to do with the fact that it's just a sample of somebody rapping. But I think that if you got one of your friends or yourself or somebody you know, or even just hired somebody to like do a full verse on that, then it'll feel a little bit more complete, and it'll feel like, okay, this is actually part of the song, as opposed to like, I don't know, it felt like the rapping was an idea that could be explored a lot more, and I think in a much more personal way that kind of relates to the song. And it felt like both the lyrics and placement of it just didn't quite fit in. And that kind of leads me to my next point, which is the arrangement felt very constant. Oftentimes when I'm thinking about arrangement, I think of it as either like an emotional journey or an energetic journey, where you're going from like low energy like to high energy, back down to low, back to high, or whatever, or some kind of arc. And to me, it feels like the song kind of starts, and then she's singing, and then it goes to an instrumental, and then there's some rapping, and then it goes to an instrumental, and then some more singing. And energetically, it's just like, it's super consistent all the way through. Maybe like there's a slight energy increase when the rapping starts. So I think having either like a breakdown or a bridge section where you get really minimal with it and use kind of like more space could help out a lot and kind of break it up. Also, like I think a lot of your chord progressions and all your instrumentals are really good, but like all the sounds that I'm hearing right here are all the exact same sounds I'm hearing right here. So the drums don't really change. I I don't even necessarily think it's a build-up. Build-up is much more of like an EDM kind of term to it, but I think of having like, just having things change more over time. And it just feels like you kind of like, you put together a series of loops that work really well together between the drums and the bass and the melodic parts and chords and everything. But it doesn't, like, it's just one consistent instrumental loop all the way through. So negative space, removing things can be really, really valuable for doing that kind of thing. So taking things out or adding new things in. So make it so that what I'm hearing at the end of the song, so yeah, more variations, elements coming in, elements coming out. Try to make sure that like the verses and the choruses feel different from each other. Like they still feel like the same song, but like have something different going on with them. I think that's the number one critique I have of this track, is that it feels kind of like you made a set of sounds that work well together and you just kind of copied and pasted them all the way through the arrangement and then added in vocals here and there. So I think once you do that, I mean, I don't know, you already made a music video for this track, so you're probably not going to go back in and change it. But going forward, if you're make another track with a similar kind of vibe to it, that would definitely be something I would watch out for, is just making sure that things are changing as you get to different parts of the arrangement. But it's a cool track. Like I said, it has a really cool vibe. Pretty much anytime you're dealing with vocals, I would much prefer people to like source it themselves, like find somebody. I think that to me, the bass was not a key feature of this song, and it didn't necessarily need to be. Like the bass worked. This is not like a bass music track. It's not like a house music track or a dubstep track or something like that where the bass is super, super important. To me, this has much more of a kind of like pop music kind of feel, where the bass is important, but it doesn't need to be super front and center. You could probably turn up the bass a tiny bit and I wouldn't necessarily mind, but I didn't necessarily think of that as an issue. And I think the mastering sounded decent. Again, like because this is not a big in-your-face EDM track, you don't need it to be super loud. And I think the biggest issue is with the mix and mostly the vocals, and making sure the vocals line up in the mix more so than the mastering. But I think it sounded fine. I think you can maybe push it a little bit harder on the master, but that was not the main thing that grabbed my attention in terms of the things you need to look at. Cool. Hopefully that'll make sense. It seems like you're picking up what I'm putting down. But this is a dope track. I'm really digging it. I was like really surprised that it wasn't her actually singing though. That was kind of funny. All right, so I need to figure out why links are not working in the YouTube chat. So let me look at that real quick, because it seems like people are trying to send me links. Yeah, no worries, Jack. I appreciate you coming by and sharing a track. I don't know if anybody else is still in here, but if there is, and you want to share a track, you can just send me a track or a link to the artist name and song name, and I will just Google it, and that'll be how I'll find your track. But while I'm waiting for that to happen, yeah, the music video is dope. Did you just like kind of go out and film that yourself? Yeah, that's what I'm seeing. I swear to God, I've seen people post links in YouTube chat before. So I'm wondering if there's a way to get around it, or if there's a way for me to even like see where the spam is. Because otherwise, I'm gonna need to come up with an entirely new system for how I'm gonna be doing this. I was totally expecting just be able to like put in links in there. Yeah, hopefully this doesn't ruin my entire idea of putting links in there. Because if somebody has like a work in progress where they have it on private, I can only open it with the SoundCloud link. So I'm going to keep looking into it and see if I can figure that out. Cool. It is not showing up in the Google search I just did. Jeanette. I'm getting a bunch of other coronavirus related stuff come up. I'll just search for your SoundCloud and see what happens. Cool, there he is, found it. Sweet, and feel free to let me know if you have any like comments or things you want me to focus on when I'm taking a listen here.
Hey, yo, bro, pass me the bag, gotta get some sanitizer. Damn, is that you, Rona? Rona, is that you?
Sit down, let go.
Corona, what you want? Wait, I don't wanna die young. Past the lie, I just wanna do.
Yeah, a Discord group for links is probably the solution.
What you want, what you want? You know what I mean? Fuck the quarantine, I'm just living like a beast. I got no more beaches, I'm just chilling in my crib. I said, wash your hands before smiling on my dick. Man, she got it big, and she sliding on my face. Cause she got some magic up on my case. And she call me daddy, cause I'm a beast. See, she call me ex, while we having sex. But she got no mask. Corona got me jerky with the sanitizer. Then I'm finding size, but still I'm sanitizing. Right? Corona, what you want? Wait, I don't wanna die young. Past the lie, I just wanna do. Die quick, I just wanna have fun. What you want, what you want? Hey, Corona, what you want? Wait, I don't wanna die young. Past the lie, I just wanna do. Die quick, I just wanna have fun. What you want, what you want? Hey, hold up, Rona, hold up, man. You took all my bitches, Rona. You took all my bitches, and I ain't got enough right now. Man, I think I'm gonna have to sign up to be a monk, bro. Damn, man.
Nice. Is that you producing and on the vocals, or is it just doing vocals or just production? I dig this track a lot. I feel like it's got a lot of style and it's got a lot of character. I feel like the beat fits really well with the lyrics and the vocal style too. I think my two biggest issues, I think the two things that needs the most work on, is you kind of have this like piano arpeggiated thing going on throughout the whole thing. That gets really repetitive, and I feel like I think there's a lot of room to explore with that, either switching up notes every once in a while, or switch it to a same notes but different sound, or like, I don't know, you can do some crazy editing on that little kind of, it's like a synthy piano sound. If that does a little bit more, then I think then the beat's going to be in a really solid position. Other than that, I kind of want to hear a little bit more love on the snare. I like what the kick and the hats are doing a lot. Yeah, I feel like the snare number one needs to hit a little bit harder. It feels like the kick and the hats are really kind of stealing the show from it. So layer it up, put a little compressor, a little bit of reverb on there, and I think also rhythmically you could do some really cool snare fills in here. Like I don't know if you did over here or not. Like right before you have that little space right there, have the snares be like pump pump pa or I don't know, something like that. So just rhythmically the snares are doing a little bit more, which can add a little bit more kind of a groove to it, which I think this track already has a lot of groove, but I think a little bit more could go a long way. Yeah, I think those are my big issues. The little more snare and make the piano synthy sound do more. I think that like it also kind of sounds like there's two different layers with it. One is more of like a plucky layer and one is more of like a patty synth layer. I think getting rid of the patty synth layer every once in a while could also be really effective.
I don't wanna die young. Bust the lie.
Yeah, the synthy layer is not doing it for me as much as the kind of like plucky layer in that part. The plucky layer sounds really cool. But yeah, other than that, I kind of want it to be a little bit longer. I think there's a little bit more you can explore with this. Like it's a 2-minute track and it feels like it just kind of ends. It ends like before you like really get all the way through it. But this is dope. I like it a lot. Cool. Anybody else out there got a track that they want to share? Again, like sharing links in the chat is not working. But I'm still trying to figure that out. And I appreciate all you guys who are still kind of hanging out and chatting. And I really would highly encourage you guys to give feedback to other people if you're going to be sharing tracks. I think it's more important that it's not just like me talking at you guys. If you guys want to have a conversation with each other, then I am super stoked about that. So feel free to give feedback to each other, help each other out. To me, it's really important that we all kind of like learn and grow together as a community. And there's feedback you guys would have that I might not have thought of. What's up, Connor? How's it going? It's all these people hiding in the chat that I don't even know they're there. Cool, all right. I'm still trying to figure out these YouTube settings. Okay, so apparently that I can approve users to share links. I need to figure out how to approve. Interesting. So if I put in somebody's channel URL, they become approved and then they can share links. Interesting. Harris, yeah, if you want to, I might wait until I get, you can send it and then I might wait till I do a few more people just to make sure everybody has a chance. All right, Mr. Starbeast, I may have just figured out a workaround. If you can send, I don't even know if your YouTube URL, your channel URL, I can add it to a list of approved users and then you can share links. Theoretically, this will work. But yeah, Harris, you're welcome to send another track in, but I might deprioritize it as other people are sending tracks because we already did one of yours. But I don't have a problem with doing more than one if we got time. Because I think Connor and Mr. Starbeast are trying to send me some links. Yeah, no worries, Connor. Like I said, if anybody wants to try and experiment with me, if you send me your YouTube channel URL, I can add you. I wonder if I can just click on you and approve you. I don't know if that's working. Let's try over here. Using time. I don't want to add them as a moderator. Sorry guys, this is a bit of a learning curve to trying to figure out all the streaming stuff. Next time I will definitely be more organized about it and figure out how to get links going or Discord or something like that. All right. Cool. All right. Well, we'll check out this track while we're waiting for other people to upload and get stuff sent in. And if anybody has any creative ideas on how to send me links that will bypass the chat, let me know. Yeah, Discord. I haven't made a Discord for Catalyze yet, but I definitely will, like tonight, later at some point, or tomorrow. I like the vocal sample a lot. This is a dope track. I really like it. If you are not a fan of Burial, I highly recommend checking out the Burial album Untrue, especially. I'm getting a lot of like Burial kind of vibes with the vocal sampling here, which I think is really well done. Has this kind of like washed out, reverbed, old school soul kind of sample that works really well. And based off of this and your last track, I think that you're doing really cool stuff with vocals, which is pretty dope. However, just like the other track, the drums need a little bit love in this, and I think that the quality of the drums is good. Actually, a Google Sheet's actually a great idea. I'll probably do that right now. The quality of the drums is good. Positioning of the drums is good. They just need to be a little cleaner. I think that especially your kick here, you have what I can tell what you're going for with your kick. You're going for that like gritty, distorted low-end kick. Burial is the artist, B-U-R-I-A-L, and Untrue is the album. Probably one of the most important, influential electronic music albums of the last 20 years, if not of all time. If you're into this style music, you like this kind of like gritty, ambient, but also kind of dancey, kind of hip-hoppy, like a little bit of everything kind of world. The album is basically perfect. But yeah, so I feel like I know what you're going for with the kick here, but it's not there yet. It's not grabbing my attention the way I need it to really kind of round out this beat. But I like what you're doing with the hats. I think the snare's good. And I think that other than the kick, a little bit less volume on the hi-hats, and then one more melodic element, like a piano sample would work great, either like a piano melody or some piano chords, something to help kind of fill in that mid-range with something melodic, because it has this really dark and pretty vibe, and I think you could really like go down that path pretty hard with some kind of pretty melodic element that I think would work really well. But yeah, it's a dope track. Again, it feels like a little bit, arrangement-wise, could definitely be explored a lot more in terms of like having more of a beginning, middle, and end. It feels like it kind of just starts and then loops all the way through. Sweet. So while, all right, I figured out the solution here, or who figured out the solution? Love, appreciate the idea. I'm going to make a Google spreadsheet, and then I'll put the link in the chat, and then if you guys want to send me links, you can just put it in there. So let me figure this out real quick. All right, just. Also, if you guys have any feedback for other people, I highly encourage you guys to put that in the chat too. All right, let me share this. I wonder if there's a way for me to just pin it to the top too. All right, anyone with a link can edit. All right, sorry guys, I'm figuring stuff out. All right, if anybody wants to send me a link for something that is, I can even pin that, like a private SoundCloud track or anything like that, just put it in the spreadsheet, and I will try to just kind of go top to bottom to go through people. This I think is the best solution until I get a Discord channel up and running. Yeah, once you download that kick, it's going to add a lot to this track, I feel like. But I appreciate all you guys showing up here and participating and talking and having tracks to share. This will be very boring of a stream without all you guys. So I appreciate you guys being here. And we're going to do this. Copy link, put this in here. That's the same link. Yeah, I tend to be fairly genre agnostic when giving feedback. I actually like it when people bring in weird, interesting genres. So whatever you got, let's hear it. I want any weird song you have. Did somebody paste in the link to the Google spreadsheet? Because that's the very first one there. I don't know if that was intentional or not. Cool, and if you could put in your YouTube name on the spreadsheet too, just so I know who this is, because I have no idea who Crash Levin is, because your YouTube name and your SoundCloud name could be different. All right, let's try this out. So who is this? Does anybody want to claim this track as their own? Thanks, Ecom. I really appreciate that. I'm putting a lot of effort into making some good videos for you guys, so I'm glad you're enjoying it. Yeah, percussion's dope on this track. I like it a lot. Yeah, R. Hudson, just put the URL in the spreadsheet. Nice, this is a super dope track. Definitely has a lot of like sunrise kind of vibes to me. Like my favorite time to DJ is like festivals in the sunrise. And this is definitely the kind of track I would put as like the sun is coming up, which would be super dope. I think a couple things that stand out to me. I feel like the bass should probably change a little bit as the song goes on. You kind of like, you start with these like very consistent whole note bass lines, and it just kind of like stays that way. So it'd be cool if the bass either came out or rhythmically did something a little different. I think that was like a small subtle thing. Like you don't need to do a whole bunch of sound design on the bass, just make it so like rhythmically it's not always the exact same thing over and over again. Other than that, I absolutely love the percussion. I think percussion is one of the main things I listen for in a lot of the music I listen to now. And so I think you're kind of nailing it with it. However, because you have so many percussive layers, it definitely makes it sound a little bit cluttered. And so mixing this, I don't know if you've mixed this yet or not, but I think there's a lot of kind of spreading out percussion and maybe dialing in your percussion so it doesn't sound quite so cluttered, especially during like this second half over here. Like I'm hearing like at least 3 or 4 different layers of percussion, and they all kind of, they work together really well, but it also creates a lot of just like stuff happening. And I think in a lot of cases, especially if you're going for like a chiller kind of vibe, less can be more. So try a little bit of panning with percussion, maybe like down the volumes a little more. I think that'll help out quite a bit. And then the other really big thing I'm noticing is your kick is way too quiet. I think that this is not like a super heavy dance track, but it's definitely the kind of thing that I would like play in a DJ set and I'd want people to dance to it. So you need to make sure that the kick is really kind of abundantly clear. So kick up in volume a little bit, bass rhythmically change a little bit, percussion is awesome, but could use a little bit of mixing. I also really liked what you're doing with this kind of like free moving LFO part over here. Like that part works really well. The last thing I would maybe consider is just like a hint of vocal samples. I think that this track is really pretty, but I think it needs something to help it really kind of stand out amongst the crowd of other songs that might be kind of similar. And so I don't think you need like a whole vocalist singing whole verses and choruses, but even like either little vocal chops or just some like vocal harmonizing could go a long way. I think those are all like different directions you could take a look into. This is done. Yeah, the melody is really pretty. Totally sunrise kind of vibe. That little drum fill is also way too loud in comparison to the other drums that I got going on. But this is a super dope track. I'm really digging it. This is definitely the kind of music I've been listening to a lot recently. So I'm curious to hear what your influences were and kind of like where you're coming from with this track. And as always, feel free if you guys have any like questions or comments or things you want to say to each other, toss it in the chat. Cool, everybody good? Yeah, let me listen to the snare. Yeah, the snare could use a tiny bit of love there too. I wouldn't mind a little bit more snare action going on there. Sweet. Let me hop on to the next track. The Google spreadsheet idea, I think that was Love's idea. That is a great idea. Cool, and again, I'm gonna keep on repeating myself here because I don't know who's showing up and who just got here and who's here at all. Feel free to put in any questions or comments or things you want to talk about with the track, and I encourage you guys to listen to each other's tracks and give each other feedback. Yeah, definitely like a little bit of Odessa vibes in there. I definitely agree with that. Cool.
Falls asleep in the night, we can't believe everything we want to be. So why do you want to go home? Why do you want to be alone?
Yeah, I will definitely take a moderator if anybody wants to help me out. Hey Tom, how's it going? Is this you on the vocals, Love? Yeah, vocals sound super clean. You did a great job on this.
As far as you want.
keep calm. Let's talk about it after the stream at some point. I'm definitely interested in that. Dude, this track is dope. Any criticism I have about this are going to be super, super nitpicky. So I'm going to first talk about the reasons I really like it. First off, I think the kind of like detuned piano that's like kind of like off-putting. It's not even a piano. Yeah, the like piano that's like kind of out of tune creates this really interesting contrast with the vocals, which are like super, super clean, and most of the rest of the production is also super clean. But I really like this kind of like, not gritty, but kind of like off-kilter, almost kind of like uncomfortable piano part that's still really pretty. And then the vocals, which are like, start off almost kind of poppy. And then the song kind of switches and kind of like lives in between a couple different genres. And I think that's a sign of a really strong like artistic voice that like it's a little bit pop music, a little bit R&B, a little bit hip hop, a little bit of like almost kind of like bassy trap music with like a classical influence. And I think that kind of triangulation between all those different things makes this whole thing work really, really well. So as far as like feedback and things that you would probably want to improve, I do think the mix needs a little bit of love. I think sometimes the vocals seem nice and clean and clear and exactly where you want them to be. And some points they feel a little bit kind of muffled behind other things, especially during, I think, this section over here. On top of that, and this is also like super nitpicky, not a huge deal, but when the big bass comes in, you have this big kind of boomy, distorted low end, and each note feels like it kind of extends into the next one. And so I think that adding a little bit of decay onto your kind of like boomy, distorted 808 kind of bass line here will make it so that each time there's a hit, like the volume goes down and then you get a hit and then the volume go down and then hit, as opposed to just being constant bass sound, which is kind of what we're getting right now. Like especially right here, you can hear it that like each bass just extends from one note into the next. And I think if each note kind of faded out before the next one came in, number one, it would sound cooler because there's a bit more of a dynamics or dynamic range within your bass. But also each time you get that hit, instead of being constant bass, it's like you go up in volume, which is going to make it sound more impactful. Yeah, I have an exercise that I do with students sometimes when we're talking about like genre and influence. And I think to me, originality doesn't really exist so much anymore. So I think that one of the best ways to develop your own sound is to have lots of influences and mix them all together in a really unique way. And I think you did a really great job of that here. And then anything else I had? I also like how you switched to this kind of like plucky bass right here, which kind of has more of like a housey, like a gritty housey kind of feel to it. And then the violins are also crushing it. What did you use for the violins? Is that like Contact or something? Yeah, stupido track. Love the cover art. That feels like super on point. Yeah, really well put together track. Definitely, you can tell you put a lot of love into it. And I honestly, I think you said you're still working on it, but you got writer's block with it. I honestly don't think you need to do much more from here. I think mostly it's just kind of cleaning it up a little bit. I would love if you had like a piano solo using this piano sound. somewhere in the middle here to help kind of break up this section a little bit. But other than that, I think you're mostly kind of like just cleaning up and doing the last final changes, and then you're pretty much good to go. But love this track. If you do end up finishing this and releasing it, definitely hit me up and send it to me, because I'd love to hear what the final version looks like. Nice, yeah, the symphonic stuff sounds really solid. Cool, appreciate you sharing that. And we're just gonna keep on moving on. So this is our Hudson. Oh, this is Mr. Starbeast. Did I do the wrong one? I did. Sorry, I got one more before you, Starbeast. And I think, Hudson, you said that you are kind of newer to production. Let me pull up what you said. Yeah, I appreciate all you guys for showing up here and making this super interesting for me. Cool, no worries. All levels of an experience are welcome here, so don't worry about it. Yeah, this has like a really kind of like classic, old school, like late 80s, early 90s kind of house feel to it, which I'm digging. Okay, so I got the same thing going over here. Nice, so it kind of just does the same thing from there. It's cool. I feel like for your arpeggiated synth parts, are those MIDI or are those audio loops that you're working with? Because that'll make a difference in terms of how I give you feedback on this. But if you are somebody who sings and plays guitar, put some guitar on here. Like if you have music things that you like to be doing, I think that it's always interesting to see people put a little bit more of themselves into their track. So I think it'd be cool if you could figure out how to like toss some guitar in here, and or get some of your own vocals on there. I think that would go a really long way. What about the synth parts? Are those from a sample or are those from MIDI? There's MIDI. Cool. Yeah, I think that if you're using like the arpeggiator for something like that, there's a bunch of really cool settings on. You can tweak the arpeggiator so it can kind of change over time. So for example, just real quick, let me toss this in here. So if you're using, let me go up an octave. So if you're doing something like this, it gets kind of repetitive, but if you put up in like the steps control right here, if you set this to 1, it's going to be, if I play one chord, it's going to play the chord I'm playing plus another chord an octave higher. Let's get out of C major. So you could tweak this over time. So if you set this to be like 2 at a different part of the song, that means it's going to play the chord I'm playing plus 1 higher plus another 1 higher. So you can come up with some like really cool, interesting arpeggiations. You can also like change the order to be a different order. So I think that'll go a long way. You just take whatever sound you already have and make the arpeggiator change over time. So you're playing the same notes, but in different order and different combinations. And I think that'll go a really long way to get you a little bit more out of those arpeggiators. The other really big thing that I feel like is kind of missing is like an off-time hi-hat, which is also kind of like iconic for house music. So right now you have your kick and your snare. Kick, snare, kick, snare. So putting a hi-hat halfway between your kick and your snare will give it much more of that housey kind of feel. And we can even test this out real quick. Let me just find a drum kit that I like. This is not a very housey kit, but this will work. So you're doing just kind of this like kick, snare kind of thing, with occasionally some extra snares in there somewhere, I think. But if you put a hi-hat halfway between your kick and your snare, it's gonna give it a little bit more of a groove, which is gonna add a lot of character and a lot more for people to kind of get into when they're dancing and kind of grooving out to it. So they don't necessarily have to be here. This is just kind of like a nice, easy starting point. But halfway between your kick and your snare, just toss in a hi-hat. Or if you want to, you could put them on like 1/8 notes, and that'll also work. Although I really like the off-time version. And then you toss in some extra ones wherever you feel like it. Yeah, it gives it balance, and it'll make it feel a lot more groovy, because right now the beat is there, but like you want people to be able to groove out to it, especially if you're gonna go for like a housey kind of vibe. So let me. Yeah, you have something kind of repeating on 16th notes, but try every other 8th note and see if that helps you out. But yeah, this is a cool track. I think that obviously I kind of want the second half to be a little bit more different than the first half. Maybe put in some more vocals, put in some more percussion, toss some guitar in here, and I think that'll be super dope. But yeah, I'm digging what you have. Also, more volume on your drums. Just straight up, just crank up the volume on those guys, and that'll, I think, help you out quite a bit. But thanks for sharing that. All right, now we're on Star Beast. Star Beast, you still out there? Hopefully. Yeah, no worries, our Hudson. I guess it was Ryan Hudson. I'm already digging this intro. You guys are super into the cinematic stuff tonight, which is great. is pretty dope. I thought it was gonna go a little bit more of like a Justice kind of thing, but I'm digging this. Yeah, I'm feeling this, liking it so far. Sick. That is a super sick track. I feel like your biggest issue here is that your cinematic parts are so good that they outshine your like EDM parts, which is like a first world problem to have. I think a lot of people it's the opposite situation. So yeah, so I think a couple things that kind of I'm noticing off the top of my head, the switch into the kind of like build here, I'm not sure it quite works. I think that you kind of have this like really fast fade out. It just kind of like ends and then you have a fade in. I think that little ending into the fade in could be tweaked a little bit and dialed in a little bit more. Maybe play with like some kind of interesting filter sweep or some kind of interesting effect, or a sample, extra sample goes in there. Something to kind of like lead the audience into expecting that something's about to happen. And then when you kind of do the filter sweep up, then it will work I think a little bit better, because it's the same thing on both of these builds. Because it's like it's really close to working. I think the sweep going in is working, but the ending of the sound before it needs something going on about it. But that's number one. And then I think during the actual drops, I think there's two things here. Number one, your kick drum pattern feels a little bit repetitive, and it feels a little bit quantized, and I don't know if it's quantized or not. I found a lot of times if you're doing this, it has this really kind of like dubstep rhythm, but then the rest of the song is not really dubsteppy, and so I think I want the kick to change a little bit more. It kind of has always the same pattern as far as I can tell. There. kick, kick, snare, kick, snare, kick, kick, snare. And I think you could play with that kick pattern and like do more of a broken beat thing where every 2 bars, 3 bars, or 4 bars, it's like it's mostly the same but changed up a little bit. So I think playing with the kick pattern, I think will do a lot, and maybe even trying to unquantize the kick pattern a little bit, maybe add a little swing to the kick could make a big difference. And then I think the other big issue here is when you kind of go into this drop, like I said, you have this dubstep feeling rhythm, but none of the other sounds really scream dubstep to me. And so I think there's 2 ways you can make them kind of mesh together a little bit. Number 1 is more dubsteppy, bassy sound design. There's like a lot of bass going on here, but it's not very percussive, and that's one of the things you can listen to when you hear a lot of dubstep is it's like it really punctuates a lot of those downbeats with like big bass sounds, and here you kind of have this like almost kind of arpeggiated synth line. So one direction you could take is like more pronounced big sound design, especially on downbeats or beats that you want to emphasize. And then you can still leave all the cinematic stuff there in between. The other thing that I think will help the drops fit in a little better is negative space. So I think a lot of times when you're thinking about like big sounding EDM drops, people are thinking about like just like being hit with the wall of sound, but you can use negative space. You can use like little bits of silence to make it so those impacts feel a bit more impactful, because right now when I'm hearing this, there's just constant sound going on. Which I think works over here, but I think when you initially have these drops hit, make those impacts really heavy on certain downbeats, and then use negative space in between it, where you either have not a lot of sound or sometimes just silence in between your big hits, and that'll make each big hit feel more impactful. So I think those are the main things you want to pay attention to, when, especially for the first part of each one of these drops. I think once you kind of settle into it and you kind of like build into this part here, this part's not quite as like dubsteppy, so you can have more of these kind of like chords that flow into each other. But I think the initial start of each one of your drops, because I think they're the same thing more or less. Yeah, so work on those drops a little bit. The transition right before the drop I think could work a little well. I like straight up, like these parts are just straight up perfect. Love the way this sounds. Love the outro. The little piano parts, I think during the outro could be a little bit louder, but the strings and all the different like reverbs and things you put on those sound really, really solid. I could see you going a lot of different directions with this. If you had people remix this, I think people could you could do an electro house version of this. You could do a like full on dubstep version. You could do a trap version. I could see like you could take those kind of like big drop parts and go a lot of different directions with it. This is dope. I also agree this is a sick headshot to have. Definitely agreeing with chat on that. Anybody else? Yeah, I think again, if you want to go with depending on which direction you want to go with the beat, like the drop parts, like I said, you could go more dubsteppy or you could go not as much dubsteppy, and I think both are totally legit options. Cool. Anybody else in chat have any other thoughts, ideas, questions, comments, feedback? Yeah, I think that this is a really dope track. If you've never released a track, this is sounding really solid. I think it does need a little bit more work, but you're mostly there and it's sounding super cool. So I appreciate you sharing that. All right, next up we got Josh. Josh, if you got any things you want to put in the chat, let me know. Go ahead and toss it in there. Thanks, love. Thanks for showing up. Hopefully I'll see you again. I'm gonna try to do this again next week, so hopefully I'll see you around. This part's dope. I like this a lot. Sick. This song has a lot of style, huge style points on this one. Really, probably one of the most interesting and creative uses of vocal samples I've heard in a really long time. It seems like, especially in this area here, you were like doing all kinds of different processing with different vocal samples and layering them all together, and it worked really well. I also really like this ending here. This ending was just like beautiful. I would love like this ending to be a whole song of just this little like real pretty melodic sound with the vocal parts on top of it. Kind of reminds me of a guy named Yoshi Horikawa. Makes kind of similar stuff to this kind of thing. As far as kind of feedback, I do feel like the intro, this drum break you're using, I like it a lot. it does feel like it gets a little bit worn out, especially like by the time we get over here. And I think one of the ways to get around that, at least the direction I would probably take personally, is a little bit more kind of like glitching and chopping. So like taking this and almost doing like kind of like drum and bass, or even like a breakcore kind of like weird glitches here and there. So that way it's like, even if it's just like little fills. So you have 4 bars of this thing going, and then at the end of 4 bars, you have some like a half a bar that's like a really crazy variation on it. I think that would go really well with also the kind of like interesting, glitchy, kind of percussive vibe you have going on with the rest of the track. Yeah, I think adding a little more variation that drum break will be big. This part I loved. I thought it was super cool. Like in the same way you're kind of glitching up that vocal thing, like that little, like that, something kind of similar with the drums I think could be really cool. And that way you can kind of almost have like a call and response between like glitching vocals and glitching drum stuff. This part was really interesting, especially right here. I thought was really cool. Because you add in this extra bass line. I think the mix on that kick build could be a little cleaner. It sounds a little, it gets kind of like lost in the wash a little bit. So if you clean up that kick and make it really, really prevalent, I think that'll help kind of like increase the excitement and increase the energy level here. But I love the fake out drop. I think it's a fantastic thing to do, where you build it up and then instead of having an actual drop, you just have this pretty marimba sound with birds. Classic fake out, love it. Yeah, this is a fascinating track. I'm curious a little bit about like what's your inspiration and like genre wise where you see this, because to me it sounds kind of like a, I don't know, pseudo like drum and bass IDM me kind of thing. I don't know. So super into it. I think the arrangement works really well. I think it's mostly just something of making sure the intro doesn't wear out its welcome, and then dialing in a few extra features here and there. Yeah, the mix sounded really solid. Like I said, I want a 5-minute version of just this outro, like just like taking this and seeing where you can go with it, because I think you can do a lot of cool stuff with it. Love the marimbas. I'm trying to think of the name of the track. There's a Yossi Horikawa track that kind of reminds me of this, but I'll have to look into it and see what it is. Nice. I could totally see some Flume influence on here. You guys are crushing it tonight with the style points. Sweet. So it looks like we got one more song by Janef. Janef, I don't know if you're still there or not, but I'm going to skip you and then come back to you, just because we already heard one of your songs and we have not heard one from Tom yet. And then I'll make sure we come back around to do that one. Yeah, I'm really digging the variety of tracks you guys have been submitting. This is super cool. I like it when people do lots of different stuff. Yeah, whatever you did the marimba was really on point. Nice, I'm digging it so far. Yeah, I feel like this section either needs one more thing or one less thing. Oh, there we go. There's one less thing there. I guess that's two less things. Yeah, I feel like some strings could go nicely on this. Acoustic guitar work. Yeah, by the end it gets a little repetitive, so you definitely need to tweak with the arrangement a little bit here. I love how much feedback you guys put in the chat. That's dope. That's what I want to see, is you guys helping each other out. Cool, so really pretty. It does get a little repetitive. I think you did a really nice job at the pianos. I think one question you might want to ask yourself is, where is this song going to be played? Who's going to be listening to the song? What situation they're in? Are you going to be playing this at like a nightclub? Are you going to be playing it at like a music festival? Are people going to be listening to it at home, sitting on their couch? Are they going to be listening to it like in the background when they're driving around the car? Like, what's your desired destination for this? Because that's going to change a lot in terms of where you go from here. Because I think you could stick with this kind of like very minimal, kind of like low key, super classy house music, or you could make it a little bit more kind of groovy and like make it a little bit more of like a deep house kind of track. Or like, you know, what do you want people to dance to it? Do you want people to do you want people to stand up and dance to this, or do you want people to like sit back and chill to it, or where do you see it? Because I think that will determine a lot about what you want to be doing from here. I'm going to kind of go through chronologically the things that I'm noticing, but I agree with a lot of the comments that people are saying in chat so far. So first off, the snare, it sounds like a snare side stick kind of sound. Not sure I love it. I honestly think you could get a lot of mileage out of switching this to a snap instead. Like a really clean snap with a little bit of reverb instead of the kind of side stick. I think will also kind of like lend nicely into this kind of like minimal, sexy, you know, housey kind of track. And I think that could be super cool. And then maybe later on in the track, you can maybe swap the snap out for something like a snare or, you know, clap, whatever you want to be doing. The other really big thing, I love your chords and I love the sound of your chords, but they're happening pretty consistently every 2 bars, just throughout the whole track. It's like super predictable, except for at one point, there's a couple extra piano notes like in here somewhere. Where are they? Maybe a little too late. Anyway, somewhere in there, there's like a few extra notes in there, but try playing with the timing of the piano. So it's not just every 2 bars. Sometimes it's, you know, there's an extra quarter note in there, or there's an extra, it's an extra chord in somewhere, just so it feels rhythmically like not quite as predictable. Like you want your song to be predictable, but you also want it to be interesting, right? So try changing up the timing of your chords, add an extra chord, you know, in between some of the chords you already have, and I think that'll help change the energy a little bit. What were the other things I was noticing? If you want to go more of the kind of like deep housey direction with it, right now you have this kind of rolling side-chained sub-bass kind of bass going on, which I think works really well. But if you want to bring up that funkiness level and you want to bring up the danceability, try either replacing that or layering it with a bit more of like a plucky bass kind of sound that has a little bit more of an interesting rhythm. And I think that will fit in really well, especially as you get to the second half where you've heard this forever. And so if you have some kind of transition over here, you swap it in for like a bit more of like, any kind of like plucky house bass sound would work really well. You just literally take a saw wave or a square wave and play it at a low octave, and then make the filter go up like this. That's too much. Something like that. Yeah, some kind of like donkey, plucky bass sound I think will go really, really well in there as a way to kind of like pick up the energy and make it sound more interesting during the second half. And at the same time, I think when I think of deep house and the like sounds that define deep house, I think a lot about like really soulful vocal samples. So you could put any kind of vocals you want in there, but I think finding some like old school funk and soul, you know, some woman singing about being in love or whatever, you sample that, put some effects on it and toss it in here. Will add a lot to give it that kind of like deep bass kind of thing, or deep house kind of thing. Other than that, yeah, some strings in here would go really well. Some guitar could go really well. There needs to be like some kind of extra element to help kind of switch it up. So yeah, but I think the chords are working really well. The beat's working pretty well. Like I feel like you did a really good job with this image here, because this image very much kind of like reminds me of like what this kind of song reminds me of. It's kind of like, you know, cityscape at night, you know, thing going on. But I think you can bump up the energy level quite a bit here by adding a few more elements and a little bit more lively with bass, maybe some vocal samples, maybe a little extra melody in there. Could go a long way. Cool. That's a dope track though. Anybody else got any thoughts, ideas, questions, comments? really appreciate that you guys are participating. This is making my life super awesome. Let me check some things. Sweet. So we got another track from Janef. Is it just that? Cool. Janef, you're still out there. We're going to take a look at the other track. Also, this is the last one I have in the spreadsheet right now. So I guess this is your last call to put another track in there if anybody else is out there who either has not had a track or wants to have a track reviewed in today. Yeah, that's the whole point of the stream, so you guys can learn from each other, grow together as a crew, as a community. Dope. Yeah, it sounds like a demo beat that you're trying to get people to rap over or something like that. I think that overall it sounds really solid. I think it has this really kind of I love the like reggaeton kind of vibe of it, and I think the guitar and the beat work really, really well together. I think that the weak point here is the strings. I think the strings sound like sampled strings, and that's something it's kind of hard to get away from. I don't know what you're using for the strings, but synthetic strings, like I said, they can just kind of sound that way, and you can do a lot of processing to synthetic strings to kind of make them sound good, but really it comes with like starting with really good string samples. So having a plugin like Contact or East West or whatever orchestral sound library people are grabbing stuff from can make a really big difference. And if you start with kind of okay sounding strings, there's not much you can do about that to like make them sound really good. So that's probably the thing you're gonna have to work out the most with this kind of track. I think the guitar sounded great. I think the beat sounded pretty solid. I think everything kind of fit together. I kind of want a little bit more of like a bass line to go in here. There's a little bit of bass in there, but the bass is not really super present. So I think you could not only bring that up in the mix a little bit, but also kind of dial that in a little bit more. Other than that, your kick drum here, this might be more of a personal preference thing than anything else, but it has a lot of mid-range to it, which is something I think you could do with a little bit less of. When it comes to drum production, sample selection is like a huge, huge deal. So you want to make sure you're starting with decent samples. And one of the things I listen for when I listen for drum samples is, where's my drums? So for example, in a kick drum, this kick drum has like a lot of low end, but also has like a little bit of like distortion in the mid range, whereas something that has a little bit of mid range too, whereas this one doesn't have a lot of mid range. This is mostly just really low end. So you could EQ that out of your kick just to tone it down a little bit, but maybe you might be better off just starting with a kick that has like a little bit more of like this is a really clean kick with not a lot of mid-range to it. So something like this I think could be a little better than the kick you have, which has a little bit more of like something like that, where it has a little bit of that mid-range in it. So that's the only other thing I'd really kind of watch out for besides the strings. But this gives it a very acoustic feel. So it also kind of depends, like, are you going to go for more of an electronic reggaeton kind of feel or more of like an acoustic kind of feel? The acoustic feel fits well with your guitar, but the synthetic one might have like a little bit more of like a cleaner feel to it, which I think I personally prefer, but that may be of like a more personal preference than anything. But that's a cool track. All right, so it looks like I got one more by Josh and one by Mr. Starbeast, and then I think after that I'm gonna call it for the evening. All right, so go ahead and check this one out. There's some Spitfire stuff with Live 11. They added some Spitfire instruments.
They told me love is blind, but you're all I see tonight. Can't get you off my mind, so I can't trust my eyes. Paradox, I'm a little bit lost. Paradox, I'm a little bit lost. Paradox, I'm a little bit lost. Paradox, 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 I'm a little bit lost. Paradox, I'm a little bit lost. Paradox, I'm a little bit lost. Paradox, paradox.
Yeah, I can hear a little bit more of the like future bassy influence here than on the other track.
Turn my life upside down, but it's better off the ground. So confusing and so
This sounded dope. Yeah, super clean mix here, at least from my end. Drums sound really dope. I think you nailed it with like the best mixed drums of any song I've heard tonight. The kick sounded just right. The snare was perfect. The hi-hats were right where you wanted to be. Honestly, I don't have a lot of like critical feedback. I feel like I really liked how you started in with the guitar. I think the guitar could be a little bit more present in the mix because I think it stands out as being something kind of unique for this style of music. So I don't know if that's a sample of guitar or if you're playing that, dope. But I think that could go up in volume across the board whenever it's happening. Because I noticed it was there, but it was a little bit behind. Or not a little behind, it's a little quiet. I also love the synth solo at the end. It's like crushing it with that. I think the vocal sample could use a little bit of love when it comes to processing. I think you could maybe like, one of the things I'll often do with vocals is I will have the main vocal layer come in like straight down the middle. And then I'll have like one or two other vocal layers kind of panned off to the side with like different amounts of reverb and delay and maybe pitched up or down a little bit in either direction to create this kind of like bigger sounding vocal part. So I think that you could beef up the vocals a little bit. I think they sound pretty nice and clean the way they are, but I think that you could go a little crazy with processing and totally get away with it. And then the other thing I think could be kind of interesting, especially as you have more kind of like impactful section over here, you have this pad in the background that's really nice and clean and smooth. And I think you could potentially play around with like gating it a little bit and kind of chopping it up. Yep, that's awesome that your girlfriend did those vocals. They sound sick. Anytime that people use original vocals, they always sound better than vocals off of Splice or whatever website. Like, yeah, doesn't matter how expensive the mic is, like recording something yourself and creating something yourself is always going to have that deeper emotional impact, and it's going to fit better with what you're doing than just some sample you found. So dig in that. I know people who have had, essentially hit albums or hit singles that, they record the vocals in their kitchen with like an iPhone, and that was the best recording they got. And then they went into the studio, spent hundreds of dollars re-recording the same thing, and then they ditched the studio recordings and just kept the iPhone recordings because they liked it better. Yeah, I think the vocals work really well. I think, the pad here, gating it and chopping it, which is something you hear a lot in this style of music where you get this kind of like rhythmic choppies on your pad sounds. Not going like too crazy with it, not too over the top with the chops, but I think a little bit of playing with dynamics and rhythm with this very consistent sound could work. I think especially in parts where you want to bring up the energy level, namely this section right here. Anything else? Yeah, sounding dope. No idea how they do what, Josh. But yeah, this is a super sick track. I honestly don't have a lot of like critical feedback. I think this is, if you're not done with this, you're probably mostly done with it from my perspective. Cool. And then this one is going to be the final track for the evening. I really appreciate all you guys for showing up and submitting tracks, or multiple tracks in some place. This has been a lot of fun for me. This is one of my favorite things to do with classes that I teach, or just students in general, or just people in general, is just hang out and talk about tracks and learn from each other. So I'm going to try to keep doing this every Friday. I don't know if it'll be every Friday, but most Fridays. But if you want to be around, I'm going to try to keep posting the stream schedule. I don't know if you saw the post I made earlier this week about upcoming streams and things like that. But if you guys have ideas for things we can do in the streams, or how I could improve this stream experience, I think figuring out the spreadsheet kind of saved the day. But I'm potentially going to have to start a Discord, or not have to, I'm going to start a Discord and just kind of figure it out from there. But yeah, I'm always open to ideas. I'm been teaching for a long time, but streaming is very much a new thing for me. So I'm going to try my best to keep improving the experience so you guys can get everything you want out of this. And if you want to help the channel, the big thing I'm just struggling with right now is promotion, and just kind of getting the videos out there and getting the channel out there. So if you have friends who produce and you want to tell them about it, that would mean a lot to me. Or if on social media, if you want to repost or whatever, any of the content I'm making, that would be super, super helpful as I'm kind of trying to build and grow the community. Cool. So Mr. Darby, this is the last track for the evening. Love the Bop It sample so far.
Yeah.
This is dope. Thanks, Jeanette. I'll see you next time. I appreciate it, man. Oh man, that was a wild ride. I really like this track for a wide variety of reasons. I think the sound design is super interesting and on point. I think the whole thing feels like it drives and stays interesting the whole way through. Drums are sounding dope. Like this is a super cool track. I think if I have anything critical to say about it, I think it primarily stems from the arrangement. I think that you are, this may be your intention, and if it is, then I think that you should probably just keep it mostly what it is, but you're just like throwing idea after idea after idea at the audience, like just one to the next, the next, the next. And it does create this sense of like, I don't know, just overwhelming the audience, which I think is a great thing to do. However, I think there's a couple things you could do to smooth it out a little bit. Number one, I think a little bit more of an intro could do a lot of work. I think I love the like bop it sample, but you basically like, you basically have like 14 seconds of intro, and then it's just like from there you just like foot on the gas the whole way through. So I think having some kind of like a little bit more of a built-in intro could not only be interesting, but I think it would also help kind of the flow of the song a little bit. Yeah, I mean, most of the music I listen to is instrumental, and I think that this still felt like a lot going on. And then love all these sections here. This part was super dope. This part's super dope. That part's dope. Yeah, I think, oh man, yeah, and you have this way of arranging where like nothing really repeats itself, which is also super cool. I think having one section in the middle that is a little bit more chill, like it kind of is over here. Like this section's kind of your chill section, it feels like. Try this section maybe without all of the drums, or without the kick, or without the snare. And just to see what that does energetically to the song, and see if that like it still maintains the kind of like forward pushing energy you're looking for, without like totally changing the whole thing. Because I think this would sound really good without drums. Try it out, see if you like it. Or like I said, try it with like just get rid of the kick, but leave the snare, and then see what that does energetically to the song. And I think that'll be the perfect spot, so that way you kind of go into this section, and then you like bring it back for another, like then you hit him over the head again once you get to this section over here. But other than that, I think that like it sounds really great. I think, like I said, I think you could spread out the arrangement a little bit, give a little bit of intro, a little bit of break in the middle. But other than that, sound design wise, I love it. Rhythmically, I love it. I love the vocal sample. I think you could maybe recycle some of the bop it sample at the end, because you kind of like use the first half feels kind of focused around the bop it and like that kind of thing, and then over here we lose track of the bop it sample, so maybe bring that in just so it feels like it makes it a little more cohesive. I don't think you need to drop out parts. I think there needs to be like 8 to 16 bars in the middle where the audience can catch their breath and keep up, and then you hit them over the head again with like crazy stuff again. That would be my one major thing I think you could do. But I love this song. Normally drum and bass is not really my thing, but I think that this was totally something I would like play in a DJ set. And I think that it's like, it's interesting, it's fun, its sound design is great. Like you're nailing it here. It's just the arrangement I think could be a little bit of dialing in, but I don't even think that's even necessary if you don't necessarily feel like it. Yeah, really, really solid track. Cool. Anybody else? Thoughts, feedback, comments, ideas? I've been super impressed by not only the diversity of sounds, but also the quality of sounds people have been playing tonight. So I'm into it. Yeah, kind of almost some parts kind of remind me of what's his name? Posage, Posij. He's a dude on Noise's record label, and there's a few songs that are kind of in this vein. So if you haven't checked him out, and if you're into this kind of sound design, I'd check out his stuff. Henry, I was just about to wrap up, but considering you're already here, there's a Google spreadsheet pinned at the top of the chat. If you click on that and put in your link in it, put your song in the spreadsheet, I will give it a listen real quick, but then after that I'm calling it because I need to eat some food. Awesome, Mr. Sharpie. So, well, thanks for coming and checking it out. I appreciate it. I started this channel a couple months ago to kind of just share music production stuff, and this is my 4th stream I've done so far. So I'm still trying to figure out all the streaming stuff, but I mostly just do YouTube videos on music production. Yeah, and if you guys are making updates to these tracks and you want to like send me updated versions and I can take a listen to them, I believe my email is on the like about page of the YouTube channel, and then if it's not through the Catalyze Academy website, you can hit me up and send me a link and I'll check it out, or I'll try my best to check it out. Can't promise I can do it right away, but all right. Awesome. Hopefully you guys had fun. You enjoyed that. I'm still waiting on a link from Henry. And then we will wrap it up for the evening. No worries, Mike. I mean, feel free to hang out for a little bit. I think we're going to do one more song. And Mike, I saw you emailed me, but I haven't had a chance to check it out yet. Or I think that was you. Or no, I think it was somebody else. Never mind. All right, so this is Henry. Feel free to toss any thoughts or things in there. Second drop's not complete. Working on with a friend. Cool. Well, we will check it out. Yeah, uploaded 27 seconds ago. That's what I like to see. Super fresh. Thanks, Josh. Appreciate it. Yeah, if it's a while in progress, don't worry about it being mastered or anything like that. Very kind of like LA beat scene, Flying Lotus kind of vibe to it. Oh, somebody else. It's pretty dope. I'm liking it. Like the kind of like tripped out beat kind of thing. I feel like overall I really like. I especially like the second half. I think this part all fits together really well. I think the one part that kind of stuck out to me as needing a little bit more work than the rest of it is this section right here. I think this part wasn't really working for me. I think that the sound is okay. It sounds like there's a little bit of delay on it, and I think it might be better with not as much delay or no delay at all. I think this section needs one other thing. I think it needs some percussion. Like I like what you did with like the bongos over here. Like something like that to help kind of fill in the space here, I think will help that out a lot. But I think just the sound design on that synth sound it's cool, but it's not as cool as like all the other sounds you have going on here. So I think that's kind of the weak link. If you can dial that in, the whole arrangement I think will flow really well. I'm also not sure I'm in love with the snare or the snare clap kind of sound. I think it's okay. I think you could either replace it with a different one or layer it up, and that'll help out quite a bit. I want something that has like a little bit more like texture to it. Like you could use some like really interesting snare or clap sample in there to help that out. Other than that, I actually like this stuff. I like this part over here. So they're like really, really similar, but I kind of like the second one better than the first one for whatever reason. I like the kind of wonkiness to the groove. I think you could do something a little bit more interesting with the hi-hat here. Like it's so spaced out and it's not really doing a whole lot. So I think that it's getting a little funkier with the hi-hat will also help out quite a bit during these sections. This is cool. I'm digging it. I feel like there's a lot of potential here, and I don't think you need to do that much more work to it. I also kind of want the bass line to do a little bit more. Right now it seems like it's very on the beat. This is something that I always have to remind myself and other people that the bass is a rhythm instrument. And so I think that when you have these bass lines where it's like on the bar, like a whole note on the bar, it can work, but using your bass to make your rhythm more interesting is I think a really underappreciated part of just bass in general and also rhythm in general. So I think you could, instead of having those whole note bass lines, make them half notes or quarter notes or switch back and forth. And I think that'll be the icing on the cake for this track. Sweet. Awesome. Well, thank you guys for sharing your tracks. Once again, I think I'm going to call it here. I feel like 2.5 hours is pretty good for a stream. I'm going to keep doing Synth Feature, so keep an eye out. I think Tuesdays I'm just going to be doing kind of like random, just making music, talking about music kind of streams. And then Fridays I'm going to be doing these kind of song feedback streams. So if you guys are into it, feel free to come back and check it out. Also, as I mentioned earlier, I'm trying to grow the channel and just making sure the YouTube algorithm, knows that I exist. So any help sharing videos, liking, commenting, all that kind of stuff is super, super helpful, and that would mean a lot to me. But yeah, thanks for coming by, everybody who is still here and everybody who showed up at all during this. I will definitely continue doing this in the future because it seems like you had a good time, I had a good time, everybody had a good time. So yeah, keep making tracks and send me them either here or in the future. Yeah, have a good weekend. Make some more music, and I want to hear it next week. If people get really into it and we start doing this more and more and we get like a regular crew of people, I might start doing like challenges where you have to make either like give out sample packs where people have to use specific samples, or like they have to do certain things, and that way it can be kind of like themed, kind of like what Team Supreme does, or there's a bunch of like beat challenges out there. So if you guys are into that, let me know. Yeah, super dope tracks, everybody. And keep calm if you want to stick around, or I guess we can figure out some way that I can message you or something, and that way we can talk about moderating and how that works, because I have no idea what that even means. But I'm going to end the stream now.